This here is the latest Mercedes-Benz GLA200 facelift. This is the smallest, most affordable SUV in Mercedes-Benz Malaysia's range and has just been given a slight update for 2024. This goes against the BMW X1 and the Mini Countryman, so let's see if this is still worth your money. Full review coming up now. First things first, the second generation GLA isn't really all that old. It was first launched in Malaysia at the very end of 2020 and this facelift was launched at the very beginning of 2024. There is just over a 3-year gap over there. To me, it's still fresh, and to a lot of people, this is still the new shape GLA. It also helps that this stands out over the ultra popular but also common first generation GLA. This here is now priced at just under 260,000 ringgit, a mere 4,000 ringgit increase over the pre-facelift version. Considering how badly our ringgit is performing, I think that is very reasonable. As before, the GLA is locally assembled here in Malaysia, but for now there is just the base 200 version available right now. The more desirable 250 should come slightly later on. As for the competition, the BMW X1, the all-new version, is priced slightly higher than this one if you factor in the extended warranty and service package. There is also the Mini Countryman for about the same price, although that is at the very end of its life cycle with the new one coming very soon, so be aware of that. Technically, there's also the Audi Q3, but that is priced well over 100,000 ringgit more than this one, so that is strictly for die-hard Audi fans only. The last alternative actually comes from within, the Smart #1. The top spec Brabus version is priced at 250,000 ringgit, so for those of you who are already willing to go full electric right now, that could be a good alternative too. Now onto the facelift itself. This is a very minor update, though perhaps not quite as small as the recent A-Class facelift. As before, the base 200 wears the standard progressive line face and the bumper is actually all new. The details at the bottom have all changed. We've got more chrome now and the grille now has a lot more vertical streaks than before. However, if you do put the two cars side by side, new and old, I don't think it's going to be very obvious that the facelift is the newer, more modern design. The headlight clusters are also new, but as with recent Mercedes-Benz facelifts, the technology here has regressed slightly. They now use reflector LEDs instead of projectors from before. I'm not a big fan of that at all. The wheels, however, do look slightly nicer. They are still 18 inches and the general spoke design is similar to before, but the details are slightly nicer now. However, the grey finish seems a bit more questionable to me. I think it drowns out the size and the design of the wheels, so yeah, I'm not a fan. At the back, it is exactly the same as before, and yes, that also includes the awful fake exhaust tips. What's new are these taillights. They've got slightly updated graphics and the LED glow do look quite fresh. So as a whole, the GLA hasn't changed all that much. Whether you like the facelift changes or not, overall it is still a very handsome, fashionable small SUV, I think. Moving on inside, the changes are just as minimal in here. The biggest difference you'll see is the move to the latest generation Mercedes-Benz steering design. Now this does look good for sure, but in terms of functionality, I think it is a step backwards. These touch-based controls, they are definitely not the best to use. I'm not a fan at all. Also new is the move to the latest generation MBUX touch-based system, and it is slightly better than before. The graphics do look better and there's definitely less layers to find the functions that you'd want. It also has Apple CarPlay as before, but now finally it has a fully wireless connection. This works quite well with minimal lag and audio quality seems not to be compromised as well. Together with the MBUX update is the complete deletion of the touchpad controls down here. Now that's not such a bad thing because I don't think many people used it to begin with. What's not so good, however, is that they've now placed this really shallow tray in the place, which is just about enough to fit a regular small iPhone like mine. If I were to put a case on this, or if you have a much bigger phone, they would just not fit at all. Now you'd be forgiven to think that this is the wireless charging tray, but you'll be mistaken because that is down there instead. Other than that, the trim pieces now use this Mercedes-Benz star motif, which do look quite good. It certainly lifts the cabin way more than the fake aluminium or even fake wood trims from before. As for quality, it is all pretty decent. From top to the middle over here is all nice and soft plastics, although only the door cards are lined in leather and not the main dashboard itself. That is a cost option in most other markets, but is not available here in Malaysia. As you move down, however, it doesn't quite hold up. Down here, it's all pretty cheap, nasty plastics, and down here, in fact, yeah, that is terrible. Compared to the rest of the class, the latest all-new BMW X1 has a much nicer, far higher quality. So yeah, for once, Mercedes-Benz is being left behind slightly in terms of interior quality. That's a shame. Moving on to equipment, the base GLA is a bit of a mixed bag. The sound system runs the absolute standard 6-speaker setup and not the more expensive Burmester system. But having said that, it doesn't really sound all that bad. The base speaker setups in BMWs sound far worse than this. On the flip side, it does offer memory functions for both the front passengers, which is a very premium feature you wouldn't find on a lot of premium badge cars. And last but not least, the ambient lighting on the Mercedes-Benzes is still the very best in the industry. Moving back here, the space is very generous, definitely a big upgrade over the first generation GLA. The boot is also surprisingly large at almost 500 liters, bigger than what you expect looking at the car from the outside, of course. And then you still have the leather-lined door cards even back here, which is a very nice quality touch. But I'm afraid that's where the praises would end. The seats are just so flat and basic, not the most supportive, and you don't even get a center armrest to go with you. And then there's that big hole staring back at your face. For some reason, Mercedes-Benz Malaysia still does not see fit to fit the GLA with rear aircon vents. That I cannot understand at all. That to me is a complete deal breaker. Alright, now to drive, this car feels exactly the same as the pre-facelift GLA200. Pretty much nothing has changed, but I'll run you through everything anyway because this is a full review. So under the hood is still the same Renault-sourced 1.3 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and it makes the same 162 PS and 250 Newton meters of torque. The transmission is a 7-speed wet dual-clutch gearbox, and it sends power to the front wheels only. 0 to 100 is claimed to be done in about 8.9 seconds, so not much to shout about really. I timed it at about 9.1, 9.2, close enough. In terms of performance, it's pretty much as per what you'd expect looking at the numbers. Just about 9 seconds 0 to 100. It means it's not anywhere near the fastest cars out there, but it's not the slowest either, so it's just about average performance, I would say. If you insist on much higher performance, you'll have to wait for the 250. That will get a 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that will be much quicker across all speeds. The GLA200 is also one of the slowest cars in the class. Now, granted, I haven't driven the latest X1 petrol just yet. I've only driven the iX1 EV version, but looking at the numbers, it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo that will be much quicker. What I have driven, however, is the Mini Countryman with the exact same engine as what the X1 will have, and yes, that is significantly quicker than this. That is almost to the level of a GLA250, not the 200. What is surprising, however, is the level of refinement of this engine. This is the same one found in the base A200 as well, but on that sedan it felt much rougher. You can feel the vibrations, you can hear the roughness as well. Over here everything is much more muted, so that I'm thankful for. It now feels like a pretty decent starter Mercedes. If you're just looking for the most affordable, decent quality Mercedes-Benz there is, go for the GLA200 and not the A200. The 20,000 ringgit difference is well worth it with this upgrade, I think. There's also not too big of a penalty to pay when it comes to fuel consumption either. With the A200, I've averaged about 7 liters per 100 kilometers, but with the GLA200, despite this being a much taller, blockier car, slightly heavier as well, I've averaged just slightly higher, 7.3 liters per 100 kilometers. That is pretty respectful. I think that's pretty efficient for a car of this size, of this performance. Now let's move on to ride and handling. Mercedes-Benz has not mentioned any changes or any revisions to the suspension for this facelift, and it feels pretty much the same as before. Out on the highway, say above 60 kilometers per hour, it is still one of the most comforting, one of the most relaxing small SUVs available in the market, bar none. It is so nice driving this car around, cruising around town, cruising around on the highways. It is one of the best riding SUVs out there. But in typical Mercedes-Benz fashion, while its primary ride is fantastic, its secondary ride, the way it deals with slow speed bumps and sharp jolts, it's not quite the best. It does move the body around quite a fair bit. This being a high riding SUV as well, you do get your body moved around a little bit, especially on really badly paved roads like say Bangsa and so on. But as a whole, in terms of comfort, this is easily one of the more comfortable SUVs out there. But there is a price to pay for that, of course, and that comes in terms of its handling. This car is, to me, borderline too soft to be driven hard across, bendy, fun roads. This isn't the kind of car that you want to take up Genting, for instance. It definitely can handle it, but you won't have too much fun. If you drive a little bit too fast through the corners, the body roll is going to be a little bit too much. Your passengers are going to scream and complain. It's just not that kind of car. It's not worth the trouble. But then again, I don't think that is something a lot of the core GLA200 customers are thinking of doing anyway. So based on what it's supposed to do, it does very well. Next, let's move on to refinement. I've already mentioned the engine over here is far more refined, far quieter compared to the exact same engine fitted to the Mercedes-Benz A200. I'm not quite sure why that is, but I'm surely thankful for the revisions. The A200 felt a little bit too rough, a little bit too cheap, almost unbecoming of a premium stature Mercedes-Benz. This, however, is a proper Mercedes-Benz through and through. It feels like a proper car. Even when you rev the engine up high, it does take a little bit of time before it goes. There's a bit of a gap between the transmission shifting down and then the torque being delivered. But even at the top end of the rev range, the engine does sound actually quite nice. It's not a sporty note, but it's not a rough note either. I think that is just fine. Now, in terms of road noise, I'm sure you can hear there's plenty going in right now, but for a car like this, that is pretty acceptable, I think. I don't think a Mini Countryman or a BMW X1 is going to be far superior in this department. In terms of wind noise, however, this car is actually excellent. You can bring it up to 120, 130 without any sort of wind whistling coming into the cabin. That is excellent though. One last thing is the driving assist systems, or rather the lack thereof. This does have autonomous emergency braking, or AEB, plus a blind spot monitor, but not much beyond that. This does not have adaptive cruise control. It does not have active lane keep assist for a level 2 semi-autonomous driving, and so on. So that to me is not horrendous, but it does offer less than what you would expect from a premium car. I mean, this is Malaysia. people buying any car below 100,000 ringgit up to 150, 200. Most cars are now equipped with ADAS, full ADAS as standard, for them to then upgrade into a Mercedes-Benz and not get any of these features. I think that is completely unacceptable. Mercedes-Benz Malaysia, I know I've mentioned this many times, but I think it's about time that you catch up with the times. Malaysia, I know, is a bit of a unique country in terms of vehicle specifications, but in terms of safety requirements, we are well ahead of most other countries. Yes, granted, in a lot of other countries, all these features are optional extras, but here we have the data that even for base Perodua customers, they are willing to pay extra for better ADAS, better safety features. So why shouldn't Mercedes-Benz customers have the same features? I mean, we are talking about cars that are costing over 200,000 ringgit. Even if the additional features are going to add, say, 10,000 ringgit to the final price of the car, I don't think any of the customers would complain. Whether it's priced at 260 or 270, maybe even 280, they will gladly pay that price. So that's my full review of the latest 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLA200 facelift here in Malaysia. Clearly, the facelift is very minor, and even the visual changes, they don't look all that different at all. That doesn't change the fact, however, that the GLA remains a super comfortable, relaxing and handsome small SUV for use around town and on the highways as well. Especially if your benchmark is the first generation GLA, the second version is just miles better, both in terms of comfort, interior quality and even space inside. Now, of course, being the base 200, this offers just about enough performance for most people. But if you insist on having, say, above average performance, you'll have to wait for the 250. Having said that, I would say that this should be more than enough for the core target market of the GLA. So, what do you think of the GLA as a whole and my review? Do let me know in the comment section below. For now, thank you for watching everyone, and stay safe.